Thank you all for joining us today for today's webinar, Navigating the Changing Landscape, Key Trends Impacting the World of IBM Planning Analytics. My name is Terry Kearns. I'm a Senior Account Executive with Revelwood. Joining me today is Lee Lazaro. Lee runs our IBM Planning Analytics practice. He is a true all-star in this industry. He's been at this for 30 years, consulting and providing implementation experience, specifically with the Planning Analytics, formerly TM1 solution. Some of you know Lee, know him well. He's got a variety of YouTube videos and tips and tricks and things. And for some of you today, it'll be a real treat. You'll get to know Lee on the call. He's also performed a variety of aspects of different projects for us, including participating on the sales side, works on the design, implementation, training, and support. He's pretty much a jack of all trades for us. And he's done this in a variety of different industries with, virtually all of our customers. So it's a real treat to have Lee here today. Our agenda for the presentation, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of Revelwood. And then we're going to dive in. Lee's going to take us through the trends that are impacting the world of planning analytics and FP&A today, including how AI capabilities with planning analytics, our customers are using those to unlock predictive modeling and forecasting capabilities. He's going to touch on the many organizations that are embracing XP&A, or extended planning and analytics, to break down traditional silos and expand beyond planning beyond the Office of Finance and into other parts of the business. We'll talk about cloud strategies, migrating to the cloud, the implications for scalability, flexibility, and cost efficiencies. And then finally, the dynamic business environment that we find ourselves in today with the workforce changes and different strategies on how to handle those. Again, for those of you who don't know Revelwood, we have been a long-time IBM Analytics business partner, and we have been helping professionals in the Office of Finance for over 25 years. We've got hundreds of successful planning analytics implementations worldwide, team of certified, experienced, deep experience planning analytics consultants, focusing on business and technology, and a very close relationship with IBM. As you can imagine, we're a gold business partner. We are actually the first gold business partner for IBM after the acquisition of TM1. We're members of the North American Business Partner Council and the Planning Analytics Advisory Board. So very strategic partnership with IBM. And we like to say that we speak business first, which means that we start with the business problem and use enabling technologies to help our clients solve those problems. With that, I'm going to pass the baton to Lee.
So let's start the presentation with an obvious introduction sentence. The world is changing. Okay, and I think most of you have heard this before. You might have heard it from a coworker or manager. You probably heard it from your parents, who heard it from their parents a long time ago. You might have even heard it from me in some of the previous webinars that Terry had referenced. Okay, but what does that really mean? There have been a lot of changes over the past few years, and the term that I keep hearing is disruption. This is disruptive. This is a disruptive industry, a disruptive tool. This is a disruption. Okay, and every time I read an article about disruptions or I hear a story about something's changing, everybody always jumps right into how did COVID change the world? But if you really think about it, it's not just one event or one industry. There are a lot of other situations that also occurred. For example, 10 years ago, who would have thought the taxi cab industry would be so different? Look at what Uber's done to the industry. Okay? Look at what Airbnb has done to the hotel industry. Look at what Zoom has done to the entire concept of face-to-face meetings. The reality of all this is you can't ignore it. You can't just pretend that it's not happening. Okay? In my off time, I'm also a scout leader, and one of the mottos that we teach our kids is be prepared. Okay? In order to be prepared, this means understanding. This means planning. You put that all together, this means adjustment. So right now, whether your business is booming or struggling, your financial outlook will change. Okay? The goal of today is to talk about some of these changes and discuss the ways that companies are approaching them. So the way that I've created this presentation and the discussion that we're going to be having is I'm going to offer a little bit of thoughts about what is the topic? What is AI? What does this mean? What are people thinking about? And then we're also going to look into how are companies approaching it? If it's an issue, how are they solving it? If it's a change, how are they mitigating it? If it's an understanding, how are they learning about it? And what you're going to see over the course of each of the topics is we're going to break it down into those two parts. What's the issue? What can we do about it? Okay. So let's start with the first trend, AI. Everybody hears AI. AI is everything. Every day you read something in the news, there's a new AI trend. Just read a story this morning. XYZ company invested $44 million in trying to use AI to solve a medical issue. Someone else invested XYZ to use AI to solve another problem. Okay. And it seems like artificial intelligence and machine learning is everywhere. Okay. AI and ML are behind self-driving cars. I even read an article just a few moments ago about starting to do with helicopter taxis, similar in nature. You can use AI to write articles, to update your headshots, figure out what to cook for dinner. There's even this one made me laugh. There's even an AI robotic cat that you can get to wander around your house and keep an eye on things. Okay. But the question that we're going to answer for today isn't what is AI, it's how is, or more importantly, how will AI impact the Office of Finance? Wall Street Journal wrote an article asking that question. Okay. And in that article, their main takeaway, the Office of Finance should start using AI, use cases, sandboxes, long-term planning. Okay. Experts from both Gartner and the Hackett Group are urging CFOs to develop their vision for AI. There are lots and lots of stories and lots of articles that I read, and almost every one of them has said we should get involved. You should get involved with AI. Okay. There are fears going around saying, is AI going to take over our job? What's going to happen? And the stories that I keep reading, I see a similar pattern. AI is not necessarily going to be taking over many of the finance situations. What will be the case is organizations that don't embrace AI will face some of the challenges. Okay? And the great thing about it, in fact, Gartner actually believes that financial planning software, tools like Planning Analytics, TM1, the financial planning software is at the forefront of what they call finance modernization efforts. Okay? These tools incorporate AI, they incorporate ML in them. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to start by taking a look at how AI could be used with planning analytics. Okay. The way that I'm going to focus on AI is I'm going to talk about ChatGPT. Okay. One of the recent trends in the whole world of AI is ChatGPT. And I've been asked about it this a lot. Okay. The tool is still in its infancy stage, but it's already very, very powerful. Okay. So for starters, let's answer the question about what is ChatGPT? Okay. In its basic sense, ChatGPT, by the way, GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Okay, ChatGPT is really just a large language model-based chat box. It's designed to be a chatbot. It's designed to use a conversational approach to search the web for answers to whatever you're asking. Okay? You may have heard stories about people using this to write essays, high school essays, college essays, even resumes. Okay, you've heard people use this to come up with ideas for things such as recipes or lyrics, or I've seen somebody wrote a screenplay using it. Okay, for purposes of today, I've heard about people using ChatGPT to write code. So I thought I would try that out as our approach today. Let's have the tool write some planning analytics logic. Okay. As a test, I asked ChatGPT to write a simple rule for units times price. Okay. And what you see on the screen are some screenshots of what came out. Okay? Because what I did is I asked the tool to write that simple rule, and then I did it a few more times. Sometimes I used the exact same wording, sometimes I used a minor change. The component with the red box where it says LE, that's exactly what I asked. The section, the bottom section of each area where there's the green component is what it came back. Okay. And the biggest positive that you could see on this screen is that the tool was properly able to write the rule. Okay? In addition, the tool was even able to deduce a few things for me. One example, I asked the system to calculate units times price. The tool is smart enough to figure out that this rule was for sales. So when you take a look at that, you could see some of the results and some of the aspects of what the end result was. I never said the word sales, but every one of these results came into that. Okay. Another example, bottom right corner, I typed letters PA. When I typed PA, the tool was able to determine that I was referencing Planning Analytics. Okay. This is great stuff. This is something where I asked the tool a simple question. It gave me a simple answer. Now, let's talk about that word simple. I asked the tool a question, and after doing TM1 and Planning Analytics for decades, I added the word simple in there. But asking the simple thing of, can you write a rule to calculate units times price? It gave me back a good answer. Now, let me dig a little bit on that word good. There are some challenges with this approach. The first thing that you're going to notice is that I asked the exact same concept. Yeah, I changed the wording a little bit, but I asked it in some of the cases. But I asked the exact same concept 4 times, and I got 4 different answers. Okay? Sometimes the difference is very minor, such as the formatting. Top left, bottom right gives the exact same code, but it's clear that one of them used a format similar to the legacy tool, and one of them used a format similar to the new PA editor. Okay, but there's also some bigger differences that could potentially impact your model. Okay, you could see the top left result references an internal element, okay? Units, whereas the top right result references a DB formula, DB of cube name, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the challenge here is that for those who attended my optimization presentation or those who were really technical in the design, know that the DB formula works much slower than an internal reference. Okay, so while the rule is technically going to work, if you have a really large cube or you have something where there's a lot of feeders or a lot of data, there will be a performance impact by writing it top left versus top right. Okay? The biggest difference, however, is when you look at that bottom left result. This is the one example that it's actually going to break. This example doesn't define an N colon identifier, and that has a huge impact on the data. The concept of writing a rule where I say N colon is to say, do a calculation at the leaf level and then add the results together. So if we say sales equals N colon, it's going to do the calculation at the lowest level of product and department and company and pieces like that. And then if we did something, let's just do time. I always like to do time in our head because it's easy to think about. January, February, March rolls into Q1, basic calendar year. Okay. If I do sales equals N colon units times price, it'll calculate a dollar value for January, calculate a dollar for February, calculate a dollar for March. And then when it gets to Q1, it's not going to calculate using X times Y. It's going to calculate using that sum. That's the whole purpose of a consolidation tool. But that bottom left corner doesn't say N colon. And by doing that, it says, I'm going to multiply, even at the quarterly level, I'm going to multiply units times price. So if I had 5 units in January, 5 units in February, 5 units in March, it's going to say 15 units for the quarter. Awesome. If I say $1 for January, $1 for February, $1 for March, it's going to say $3 for the quarter. Not so awesome. Okay? Adding these prices together will never properly give us a correct sales amount. ChatGPT was able to give me a concept, but if all I did is a copy paste, that's where not only will I say I would potentially explode the cube by having too much calculations or too much processing, I'm actually going to get incorrect data. Okay? Now, based on this, I did a little bit more research on the tool. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I repeatedly found is that chatbots sometimes contradict themselves. Okay? And most of this isn't due to the chatbot itself. It's due to the concept of that acronym that you may have heard me say before, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. And in this case, the garbage is not the data, but is instead the question itself. Okay? One of the trends that's happening in the industry is the creation of a brand new job, a brand new role. And this role is called a prompt engineer. And the purpose of this role is to be able to write the perfect questions that'll help these chatbots get you the desired results, the response that you want. So as we're seeing here, ChatGPT did an excellent job here. ChatGPT is an amazing tool, and it gave me the information that I wanted, and everybody knows this is going to impact the future. Okay? But at the beginning of this slide, I said that the tool is still in its infancy. Some of the challenges, some of the things that we see on this screen are examples why. Okay? So that's an aspect of AI. Okay? But does that mean you should avoid it entirely? Absolutely not. Okay? Another trend that's happening in the world today is a change in the target audience using AI. You see movies from the 70s and 80s, you even think about it now, and AI is technology. I need these scientists, I need these statisticians, I need this really, really complex math people. And that's still a perception in the market. Okay. A company called BPM Partners, they did a vendor landscape analysis. And one of the quotes in their report said, the latest iterations of AI capabilities in most products are aimed at the business users, not the data scientists. What does that mean? That means that even though we have a lot of math geeks like myself, I love calculations, I love stats, I love numbers. I even joke with my kids, I'll throw out the words math is, and I wait for them to yell back to me everything. Okay? I love math. But the people using the tools, the finance teams, the AI developers have realized many of the users simply just want to see some results. And the ultimate goal of these results is to help them make better business decisions. Okay? This is where planning analytics comes in. PA includes a feature called forecasting, which you can see on the screen. And the goal of that tool is to help you model trends, model seasonality, and incorporate time dependence in your data. Okay? The greatest part about it is this feature uses an automated approach that's going to make your forecasting easy to use, even if you're not familiar with time series modeling. Okay? It allows you to define aspects such as confidence bounds. You could see the way the chart is at the bottom right corner. Model types, historical data that you want to include or ignore. I referenced the concept of COVID before. And if it turns out that I'm looking at a 1 or 2 year plan, I may want to look at 1 or 2 years of data. If I'm looking at a 20 or 30 year historical data to figure out my plan, then maybe I want to ignore a couple of years. Planning Analytics forecasting tool allows you to incorporate that. It also gives you various visualizations so you can easily see the trends in your data instead of just looking at a set of numbers. Okay? This is a great opportunity to start getting comfortable with AI. It's a great opportunity to start utilizing some of the aspects of the tool. Are many of my clients using the forecasting aspect as the end all be all? Absolutely not. And I wouldn't recommend it. They're using it as a starting point or a conjunction point. Starting point. Hey, I know I'm going to do some kind of a forecast next year. Let the system try to give me a bit of a prediction and see what's happening. Conjunction. Maybe we do both. Maybe we have our users do some planning and maybe we do forecasting and let's start comparing the results. This gives me the added benefit of utilizing the tool, but also utilizing the humans, utilizing the expertise that we have. And this is a great introduction to get into the AI world. So that talks a little bit about the trend of AI in regards to what we're thinking at on the finance side. Another buzzword that's trending around in the industry is XP&A, which stands for Extended Planning Analytics. If you think about it, really what the X is doing is it's just replacing the F from financial planning with an X for extended planning. Okay. And although this wording is new and the phrase is new, and there's definitely buzzwords right now, the concept is not. There have been lots of different names for this, but if you think about it, they all have the same exact meaning. Expand your planning outside of just the finance team. This is breaking down all of what we call the traditional silos between finance and operations. About 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, I built a model for an oil and gas company. The initial model started off with all the traditional buckets: revenue, staff planning, CapEx, OpEx. The question came up during the implementation: what would happen if we built a new pump within there? And if you think about it, this situation is not just a finance question, but it's also an operational question since it changes the metrics associated with flow, servicing, things like that. And the result of it didn't just impact one of these traditional buckets that I listed before. It impacted all of them. The installation of the pump had CapEx impacts. Running the pump had staff impacts. The flows through the pump have revenue aspects. Put this all together, that's what they mean by XP&A. There's been lots of studies about this. And one of my favorite stats is from a few years ago. In a 2020 study, Gartner said, and I quote, by 2024, 70% of new FP&A projects will become XP&A projects, extending their scope beyond the finance domain into other areas of enterprise planning and analytics. Interesting quote. Well, now it's pretty close to 2024, and this might be the right time for you to start thinking about, how do I expand my planning beyond the traditional finance team? What does that mean, expanding? This is the opportunity for you to look into other areas of the organization and figure out, how do they impact your planning. This is the opportunity to merge call center metrics with your resource planning. It's the opportunity to use sales and marketing data with your demand planning and your inventory analysis. It's the opportunity to define marketing spend, focus on the results that you want within your sales model. Okay? And all of these have a vast range of what kinds of things we want to think about, but they all have one thing in common. They're merging what used to be separate aspects of a company into a single unified approach. But if you think about it, finance is still the centerpiece to every aspect of the planning. You still need to work with HR to get the personnel details. You still need to work with sales for the top half of your P&L, and depending on how you're doing it, for calculated COGS results. You still need to work with IT for costs associated with new subscriptions, costs for equipment, aspects associated with remote access. The question to think about isn't, do I need to chat with the other teams? The question to think about is, how often should I be chatting with these other teams? And that's where I'm going to call it the bottom of what we see on the slide right now is, the frequency is tied to how quickly these facts are changing and how quickly you could turn these facts into actionable intelligence. Actionable intelligence. If you can't turn these facts around quickly, then the result might be out of date by the time you pull it all together. This is why you have consolidation tools. This is why you have tools like Planning Analytics. This is why the finance team has the opportunity to excel, because this concept of actionable is where the finance already excels. Okay? You guys are the experts in collecting data. People in the other departments know their area, but they don't necessarily know, how do I pull this all together? This is where the finance team can help the organization as a whole by doing that pulling and by helping with these analyses. XP&A, transition the finance planning into extended planning. But as the finance team, you're still the centerpiece. It still gives you the opportunity to utilize all the skills you have, the accounting aspects, all the financial pieces, all the reporting, but also being able to take this abundance of numbers, this abundance of data, this abundance of information, and start to see the correlation and start to put it together to help other aspects of the organization plan. XP&A. Third trend. TM1 has historically been a finance tool, and many finance teams don't really want to maintain the software. I'm finding a trend where, even though the tool is a finance tool, the finance teams want to stay on the finance side. They don't want to deal with upgrades such as PA upgrades, Windows patches. They don't want to deal with machine maintenance. Let me add some more RAM. Let me put in some more hard drive. They don't want to deal with tech issues like logins. Okay. And to complicate things a little bit more, the migration to Planning Analytics has converted what was once a real simple Excel add-in into a combination of Excel components, web components, server components, Java, Docker, Linux, things like that. So what's happening is, the trend that we're seeing is a lot of financial teams are much, much more reliant right now on the IT team. But that leads to another challenge. We're seeing that many of these IT teams either don't want to or don't necessarily have the resources to perform these tasks. Maybe their team got smaller. Maybe some of the IT teams want to focus on the internal networking, not necessarily focusing on the software. Maybe some of the IT teams want to only focus on the really large applications, your SAP or your Oracle implementation. Okay. You put all this together, and companies are struggling to maintain their PA environment. Okay. To mitigate this, we're seeing more and more customers migrate to the cloud. At this stage, most people know what the cloud is, but for those who don't really understand it, the cloud is really just a simple way of saying, let someone else host my machine. Okay? The cloud version of PA has the same core components as what you're used to from the software. Same database, same dimensions, cubes, rules, TI logic, all the same software concepts. Really what it is it's just a new machine. Because of the fact that someone else is hosting my machine, it's much easier to scale as needed. It's quick. For those of you who have worked with virtualizing, to be able to virtualize or expand something on a virtualized machine, if you do have the IT team to do it, similar concept on the cloud. Okay. And by doing the software and doing things over the cloud, there's less need for add-on tools. One of the challenges that happen in the legacy world on premise is, man, Excel's a really chatty client. I got to install Citrix. But by migrating over to the cloud, there's a lot less need for add-on tools like Citrix or VPN or any other remote connections. Okay? And depending on your current version, this is also a great opportunity to do some upgrades. Okay? Upgrading the software means new features, new PAW features. This is where workflow comes into play. This is where virtual hierarchies come into play. This is the forecasting that we showed a few slides ago. Okay. New PAW visualizations. This is where we have some charts, waterfall charts, live charts, interactive charts, dashboarding. Okay. This is also where we have some new PACS features. This is where we have faster performance. Don't necessarily need to teach your users the difference between DBR and DBRW. This is where we have explorations directly in Excel. I don't have to teach users another tool to do ad hoc analysis. I could do it right in Excel. Okay. But most of all, migrating over to the cloud gives a massive reduction in your maintenance. Okay. The initial setup, you don't have to do it. Upgrades, you don't have to do it. Backups, you don't have to do it. All the details we talked about in the previous slide are handled for you. Okay. Now, there's a lot of different presentations that go into the details of this topic, and there's a lot of options that you have. So instead of talking today, instead of going through the details during this presentation, I'm simply going to say, if you're thinking about migrating to the cloud, if you have any questions about the path to take, things to consider, pros and cons, timing, approach, cost, things like that, please don't hesitate to give us a call. We can absolutely talk with that in detail. The great thing about migrating to the cloud is the concept is the same across the board. The awesome thing about migrating to the cloud is every iteration is unique because every one of your PA systems are unique and we want to make sure we account for it. And this is where we have the opportunity to account for both the technical aspect and the optimization altogether. So, like I said, if it turns out that you're thinking about it and you have any questions, please give us a call. So I started my presentation by saying the world is changing, and it is. And if you read the news right now to learn about some of these changes, you'll come away with the notion that the economy right now is a pretty scary place. Every day the media continues to tell us costs are rising, production's falling, and a recession is either happening or it's about to happen, depending on which news site you read. Okay. The concept of fast and flexible has been a catchphrase for years, but it's become even more important in today's changing environment. This is leading to more customers changing their planning process, not necessarily the technology, the process itself, less inputs and more scenarios. Okay? I conducted a webinar a while back about some different approaches to quickly adjust your plan, and I went through a series of approaches that could be changed. But as always, the goal of the changes isn't just to come up with a cool technical solution. The goal of what Revelwood does, the goal of what I do, the goal of what I'm hope everybody listening in on this is thinking is, let's solve a business problem. And in my opinion, that business problem can be summed up in a single question. What are my options? The reason we want to look at the options is to figure out the results of each option. And these results provide a simple goal that we want. Minimize the impact of threats. You've heard about SWOT analyses. You've heard about all these different other pieces that you can have. And one of the big things that comes into play is the threat. We want to minimize that impact. Okay? For those of you who know me, you know that I love to plan. It's almost impossible for me to give a presentation without using the word plan. I have spreadsheets that predict everything under the sun. My wife likes to tell my boys that each of their births was scheduled via a spreadsheet. I have planning quotes on my wall. I have Ben Franklin, and I even have one from Hannibal Smith, the leader of the A-Team. But one of my favorite quotes is from the movie The Incredibles. There's a scene where little Edna is displaying a new suit, and she says, "Luck favors the prepared." That simple phrase sums up exactly what we should be trying to do. The overall goal of what we're doing is trying to be prepared, as prepared as we can. Okay. So how do we prepare and get to these results? Okay. I talk to a fair share of customers, and a pattern that I see is, let's make our planning solution go technically faster. Let's add more RAM. Let's put in a faster processor. Let's optimize the rule. Let's make our computer more powerful. And yes, every one of these aspects are important to get fast and efficient results. But when was the last time you looked at your business process? When was the last time you thought about how has your business changed? Have your models kept up with the way that you currently do business? This is the opportunity you have to reassess your planning approach. Okay. There's a lot of different ways that you could think about changing your approach. Maybe one of the things that you could do is change approach to use percents. What I want to do is I don't want to do all these intricate, deep, deep details. I don't want to do a lot of bottoms up. I don't want to make an entire 3-month budget for me to quickly get an answer. I just want to be able to modify some of my existing values by adjusting them via percent. Okay. As always, pros and cons. Pro, this is quick. It's quick to set up. It's easy to use. It's great for some long-term planning. But what it may entail is it may entail some new cubes or some new models. What it's definitely going to entail is a little bit of a different way of thought. And that's an opportunity to think through cost-benefit analysis. Cost, maybe there's a little bit of new training that needs to come into play. Benefit, I'm going to get answers immediately. Maybe I want to change to a driver model. I'm seeing trends of that more and more, where maybe what we want to do is use some of our operational activities, XP&A. Maybe we want to use some of our operational activities to calculate key revenue and expense numbers. Okay, again, quick to set up. Once we define our drivers, that's real easy to set up, but it may not provide as much detail as you're used to. And this is where we have the opportunity to start thinking about the difference between budgeting and forecasting. Yes, there are many organizations who are looking into the trend of, I just want a plan, whether it's rolling, whether it's using the word plan, whatever it is. But most of the organizations that I work with still really have two aspects. I have a detailed budget and I have a full structured process that goes around with it. And then I want to continue to update that using something called, which I often call a forecast. Okay. So using some of these approaches, this is the opportunity to not necessarily think I have to change budgeting and forecasting. This is an opportunity to say, maybe I like the way budgeting is going, but for forecasting, this is where I use the or. Forecasting, maybe I want to do something a little different, and that's where driver might come into play. Okay. If we really want to make it quick and dirty, we can even think about top-down. I want to do top-down spreading where I change data at a consolidated point, spread the results down to lower levels. Okay. I talk to organizations regularly about that, even just talked to someone yesterday. Okay? The cool thing about it is this functionality is already built into PA. Okay. The concept of top-down spreading, once TM1 had merged with EP, with enterprise planning, that functionality came right into it. And therefore, there's really no development associated with it unless one of the things we want to think about is we want to make sure that we're aware that this approach could impact values where you have complex calculations. If it turns out you have C-colon calculations, if you have really, really details that you're not just doing an input. When I do something like OpEx, majority of my OpEx, I'm simply plugging in numbers and rolling up. It's a great opportunity just to say, let me plug in a high level and push down. But if I have something like a staff planning model where I'm looking at pay raises and I have a whole bunch of if checks based on what the bonuses are going to be and things like that, top-down might not be the right approach for that aspect. Okay? But it's still something to think about for that quick and dirty. The other piece, and this is probably my favorite piece, is that whole concept of what if. Whether we're looking at sandboxing, which is the equivalent of personal what if, or whether we're looking at legitimate what ifs, this is the opportunity where you can replicate your existing environment, change a few variables and see what happens. Okay? Great thing about this. This is where you hear best case, worst case. This is where you're going to have various iterations. This is the ability for you to have multiple plans. Okay. Definitely want to think it through. Is the goal to have a public plan or a private plan? What if public plan? Sandbox private plan. Both great tools, different purposes. And the other thing that you want to do is we want to plan quicker. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to Speed up the process overall. And the easiest way to do that, change your focus. Couple of ways to change your focus are plan at a higher level. I said before about budgeting and forecasting, and I have many customers who say, I am going to plan for every individual account during my budget. But on the forecasting cycle, I want to plan at a bit of a higher level. I want to group my accounts together. Okay? Don't let yourself get into a situation where you're nitpicking on the minutia. Remember the 80-20 rule. Okay? The other thing, plan for what you can control. You can control variable costs, focus on those. Don't ignore your fixed costs. There may be exceptions to the meaning of fixed. Maybe you're going to have lenders delaying payment requirements. Maybe you're going to have owners giving a break on rent deadlines. But the main focus is what you can control, and that's typically where your variables come in. Okay. And the final trend that I want to discuss today revolves around staffing. As a techie, I often use the phrase bandwidth to determine how much a person could do. I often get calls from customers stating, I don't have the bandwidth to do what I need. Sometimes it's to create a new model. Sometimes it's for one-time situations like a budget setup. Oftentimes it's associated with just regular maintenance of the model. And there's really, I like to think that there's really two reasons why it's happening. Sometimes it's based on decisions that are out of your control, corporate decisions, staff reduction. But these are the kinds of things that you can plan for. The other reason are the things that you might not be able to plan for. Maybe an employee decides to leave. About a year ago, there was that phrase all the time of the great resignation. Okay? But no matter why it happens, it still leads to the same result. Tasks need to get done. Sometimes there's not enough resources to do them. Okay? Having someone fill in is often a reaction to the situation that was out of your control. Okay? And once you get things moving smoothly again, the best thing that you can do is try to avoid getting into that situation again. This is where headcount modeling comes in. What is a headcount model? A headcount model is a summarized overview of your staff. And it's different than a true compensation model because a headcount model is designed to show the amount of people, not the amount of dollars. It's a more compact data set. There's far less information after you remove the different details associated with compensation dollars and accruals and capitalizations and things like that. Instead of looking at salary and taxes and fringe and various iterations of those items, we're simply looking at the number of heads. And the purpose of this model is to better understand the resources in the organization. This gives you the ability to quickly analyze data by time, employee type, and other simple groupings. Okay? It allows you to easily now look at stats, turnover, churn, etc. Okay? If you're interested in learning more about headcount modeling, one of the previous webinars that I gave was specifically about that. It goes into much more deeper aspect of what are the things to consider, how to consider it, and actually shows a few customer examples of headcount modeling. Okay. But what we want to do is once we figure out our headcounts, there's two approaches to mitigate the issue when we find that there's not enough resources. Bring new people up to speed or bring in experienced personnel to help. Okay. If you take that first option, if you're looking to bring someone up to speed, the first thing that you want to do is offer training. Okay. Whether you're looking to train your team on how to use the tool and the features, whether you want someone to maintain an existing model, the right training plan is the most important aspect. So when I do this, I like to break down training into three categories: user, developer, administrator. A user is typically a finance person, someone who needs to be able to analyze the data, possibly create new reports and templates. Developer. This is a person who's going to be your coder. This is the person who's going to create or maintain the scripts, the rules, the development of the models. And the administrator. The administrator typically focuses on keeping both the model and the users moving. And this isn't an or statement. This is the opportunity where I can again say we can use an and statement. Many of our customers, I would say the vast majority of customers who have certain people with multiple roles. Maybe I'm the power user and the administrator. Maybe I'm the developer and a power user. It's not one or the other. But the way to think about it is the three aspects are you're going to want somebody who can do the ad hoc analysis and create the reports. You're going to want somebody who can change the code, and you're going to want someone who can maintain the system. Now, that's a lot of stuff. So if you're instead looking in to bring someone in with experience, this is where Revelwood can help with our staff augmentation services. Okay? This approach allows you to have an experienced PA developer, understands the tool, understands the business need, help keep your business running smoothly. Okay? couple examples that we've had. We had a large manufacturing company. Their TM1 administrator resigned with just basic 2 weeks notice. Revelwood had a team member ready to roll the following week. Okay. By having someone ready to come in, it allowed for that 1 week overlap. We were able to get a 1 week knowledge transfer, and therefore we were able to support the system and hit the ground running without saying, let me spend some time learning about this. Another one of our clients, we had a customer who was ready, they were just about to start a major PA project, and they needed help both maintaining the existing system, and they also wanted to redesign a new system. So instead of bringing in a person, we brought in a team of developers, and they were brought to supplement their in-house team. It wasn't a replacement for their in-house team, it was a supplement. So it gave us the opportunity for the teams to work together. And the end result of that is that both projects were able to move forward. The new project and the maintenance of the existing system, and their existing internal team was able to learn some of the best practices that Revelwood follows. Final example. We had a Fortune 50 company that called us up, and they were struggling to hire an internal PA developer. They were about to start their annual budget process, and unfortunately, just based on timing and what I called before bandwidth, they weren't able to get everything ready. They called us up. We were able to bring in a Revelwood team member who understood the business concepts of it and the tool. We were able to help them get ready and meet the deadlines for their budget season. So I covered a lot of topics today, but I think the best way to wrap it all up is to not look at each one of these pieces as separate items, but to instead bring them all together. Process optimization, the use of technology, the right people to keep it all together. Once you combine all these pieces, you'll be able to easily look back at what happened, but more importantly, you'll be able to look ahead and help you figure out what will happen. So with that being said, I'm going to hand this back over to Terry to wrap things up.
Thanks very much, Lee. In closing, I know we covered a lot of ground, but hopefully this prompted some good ideas about your business and your use of planning analytics and what some of these trends impacts they might have on your business. But if you'd like to talk more about it, we offer a complimentary 30-minute conversation with Lee or someone from his team about specific challenges that you might be having or seeing coming down the road. And we'd love to work with you and offer a free discussion to talk about how we might be able to help. I know we're up against the time. This is my contact information. If you'd like to take us up on that offer or have any questions at all, please reach out and we'd love to chat with you about it. Thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for joining.